The unlikely hero. In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, humanity had finally achieved its long-held dream of venturing beyond the confines of Earth. Colonies dotted distant planets, and great ships plied the starways between them. But as humanity reached for the stars, they discovered they were not alone. The galaxy was teeming with life, some benign, some indifferent, and some utterly hostile. Among the latter were the Orcs, a species as technologically advanced as they were ruthless. Their first contact with humanity had been a brutal assault on an outer colony, leaving no doubt about their intentions. Humanity found itself thrust into a war it was ill-prepared to fight, facing an enemy that seemed to outmatch them in every way. It was against this backdrop of interstellar conflict that Zara Chen's story began. Born on one of Earth's orbital habitats, Zara had never known a world without the constant hum of life support systems and the vast emptiness of space visible through every viewport. She was a child of the stars, but not in the way most would expect. Zara was small for her age, her body frail and prone to illness. In a society that valued physical prowess as a necessity for survival in the harsh environments of space and alien worlds, she was an anomaly. But what Zara lacked in physical strength, she more than made up for in intellectual capacity. Her mind was sharp, capable of processing complex information at speeds that astounded her teachers and peers alike. As a young adult, Zara had dreams of becoming a xenobiologist, studying the myriad forms of life that existed beyond Earth. The war with the Orcs had only intensified her curiosity about alien life. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for her. On her 20th birthday, Zara received the news that would change her life forever. The war effort was not going well for humanity. The Orcs' superior technology and seemingly limitless resources were pushing human forces back on every front. In response, the United Earth government had implemented a new conscription policy. Every able-bodied adult was required to serve in some capacity. Zara stared at the conscription notice, her hands trembling. She knew she wasn't fit for military service. Her body could barely handle the strain of a brisk walk, let alone the rigors of combat training. Surely, they would assign her to some research division or support role. But bureaucracy, it seemed, cared little for individual circumstances. Despite her protests and medical examinations, Zara found herself aboard a military transport, bound for the training facilities on Mars. The journey to Mars was Zara's first time leaving the familiar confines of her orbital home. As the blue marble of Earth receded behind them, Zara pressed her face against the viewport, drinking in the sight of the stars without the distortion of habitat glass between them. Despite her fear and uncertainty about what lay ahead, she couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at the vastness of space. That wonder quickly faded as the reality of military life set in. The moment Zara stepped off the transport onto the red Martian soil, she knew she was out of her depth. The other recruits towered over her, their bodies honed by lives spent in varying gravities and harsh environments. They eyed her with a mixture of curiosity and disdain, clearly wondering how someone so physically unimposing had made it through the screening process. Training was a nightmare for Zara. Every physical task was a monumental struggle. She lagged behind on runs, could barely lift the standard-issue rifle, and was invariably the last to complete any obstacle course. The drill instructors pushed her relentlessly, but even their hard-nosed determination began to waver in the face of her physical limitations. Yet, Zara refused to give up. What she lacked in strength, she made up for in determination. She spent her free time studying military tactics, weapon systems, and anything else she thought might give her an edge. While her body failed her, her mind continued to be her greatest asset. It was during a tactical simulation that Zara's potential finally began to show. While her teammates struggled to formulate a plan against a simulated Orcs attack, Zara's mind raced through possibilities. She saw patterns in the enemy's movements that others missed, predicted their strategies with uncanny accuracy, and devised counter-strategies that left even the instructors impressed. For the first time since her conscription, Zara felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she did have a place in this war after all. But that hope was tempered by the harsh reality of her situation. Tactical acumen was all well and good, but in the heat of battle, would it be enough? As the weeks of training wore on, news from the front lines grew increasingly grim. The Orcs were pushing deeper into human-controlled space, their advanced weaponry cutting through humanity's defenses like paper. Colonies that had taken decades to establish were lost in a matter of days. The pressure to get new recruits to the front lines intensified. Zara watched as, one by one, her fellow recruits were assigned to combat units and shipped out. Each departure was a stark reminder of the reality they faced. These were not just soldiers going to war. They were young men and women, many of whom would never return. Finally, Zara's own assignment came through. Despite her physical limitations, her scores in tactical simulations and strategy exercises had caught the attention of high command. She was to be assigned to a special operations unit, one tasked with high-risk, high-reward missions deep in enemy territory. The night before her deployment, Zara stood alone on the observation deck of the Mars base, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Somewhere out there, the fate of humanity was being decided. And now, against all odds, she was to play a part in that cosmic drama. As she stared into the vast expanse of space, Zara felt a curious mix of fear and excitement. She was no soldier, at least not in the traditional sense. But perhaps that was exactly why she was needed. In a war against an enemy that consistently outmatched humanity in conventional warfare, perhaps it was time for an unconventional approach. Zara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. She may not have been the soldier humanity thought it needed, but she was determined to be the soldier humanity actually needed. With her mind as her weapon, she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the first light of the Martian dawn began to creep over the horizon, Zara turned away from the viewport. It was time to face her destiny, whatever it might be. The unlikeliest of heroes was about to step onto the galactic stage, ready to prove that true strength comes in many forms. Little did Zara know that her journey was about to take her to the heart of the conflict, where she would face challenges beyond her wildest imagination and discover strengths she never knew she possessed. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the greatest heroes come in the most unexpected packages. The alien threat. The interstellar transport hummed softly as it cut through the inky blackness of space. Inside, Zara Chen sat quietly, her slight frame dwarfed by the bulk of her military-issue exosuit. Around her, the other members of her special operations unit chatted quietly or slept, their bodies and minds honed for the trials ahead. Zara felt like an imposter among them, a feeling that had haunted her since her unexpected assignment to this elite group. Their destination was Novus Prime, a human colony world on the fringes of explored space. Once a thriving outpost of human expansion, it now stood as the last line of defense against the relentless Orcs advance. The mission was clear: reinforce the planet's defenses and gather critical intelligence on the enemy's capabilities. As the transport began its descent through Novus Prime's atmosphere, Zara got her first glimpse of the alien threat that had brought humanity to the brink of extinction. Through the viewport, she could see the scars of recent battles etched across the planet's surface. Entire cities lay in ruins, their once proud towers reduced to twisted metal and rubble. In the distance, the night sky was lit by the constant flicker of energy weapons and explosions, a testament to the ongoing struggle. The transport touched down in a heavily fortified military base, one of the few remaining bastions of human resistance on the planet. As Zara and her team disembarked, they were immediately struck by the tension in the air. Soldiers moved with purposeful urgency, their faces etched with the weariness of prolonged combat. Zara's team was quickly ushered into a briefing room, where they received their first detailed look at the enemy they faced. Holographic projections flickered to life, displaying images of the Orcs and their technology. Zara leaned forward, her keen mind absorbing every detail. The Orcs were a species unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Towering beings of sinew and scale, they seemed to be a perfect fusion of biological and technological evolution. Their bodies were augmented with cybernetic enhancements, blurring the line between flesh and machine. But it was their technology that truly set them apart. Arxer weapons operated on principles that defied human understanding. They wielded energy in ways that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. Their ships could appear and disappear at will, making conventional tactics all but useless. And their armor, a living metal that adapted to any attack, had proven nearly impervious to human weaponry. As the briefing continued, Zora's mind raced. She began to see patterns in the Arxers' behavior, subtle consistencies in their seemingly chaotic strategies. But before she could fully process these insights, alarms blared throughout the base. The Arxer were attacking. In the chaos that followed, Zora found herself separated from her team. The base's defenses were crumbling under the Arxer assault, and soldiers were scrambling to mount a defense. Zora, her exosuit feeling clumsy and unwieldy, stumbled through corridors filled with smoke and debris. She emerged onto a battleground. The sky was filled with Arxer ships, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly light. On the ground, human soldiers fought desperately against waves of Arxer warriors. The aliens moved with inhuman speed and precision, their cybernetic limbs allowing them to shrug off injuries that would have felled a human instantly. Zara watched in horror as a squad of human soldiers, armed with the latest in human military technology, were cut down in seconds by a single Arxer warrior. The alien's weapon, a writhing mass of energy that seemed to have a mind of its own, tore through their armor like it was paper. In that moment, the true scale of the threat facing humanity became clear to Zora. This wasn't just a war. It was a struggle for survival against an enemy so advanced they might as well have been gods. The Arxer weren't just defeating humanity, they were obsoleting them. As the battle raged around her, Zara felt a familiar sense of helplessness. Her body, even with the assistance of the exosuit, was no match for the Arxer warriors. But as she watched the flow of the battle, her mind began to work in overdrive. She noticed patterns in the Arxers' movements, predictable sequences in their seemingly random attacks. Using her suit's communication system, Zara began relaying her observations to any human forces that would listen. At first, her transmissions were ignored, dismissed as the ramblings of a scared recruit. But as her predictions began to prove accurate, more and more soldiers began to take notice. Guided by Zora's insights, human forces began to mount an effective defense. They anticipated Arxer movements, set up ambushes, and for the first time in the battle, began to inflict significant casualties on the enemy. But the tide of the battle was not so easily turned. Despite the temporary advantage granted by Zora's tactical acumen, the Arxers' superior technology and numbers began to tell. Human defenses crumbled one by one, and the order to evacuate was given. In the chaotic retreat that followed, Zara found herself aboard one of the last transports to leave the planet. As they broke atmosphere, she watched through the viewport as Novus Prime, once a shining example of human expansion, was engulfed in the ethereal fire of Arxer weapons. The loss of Novus Prime was a devastating blow to humanity. It represented not just the loss of a strategically important world, but a stark reminder of the vast technological gap between humanity and the Arxer. The human military had thrown everything they had at the Arxer, and it hadn't been nearly enough. In the aftermath of the battle, as the remnants of the human forces regrouped at a fallback position, Zara found herself the center of attention. Her tactical insights during the battle had not gone unnoticed. Officers and soldiers alike sought her out, eager to understand how she had been able to predict Arxer movements with such accuracy. Zara struggled to explain. It wasn't something she did consciously. It was as if her mind could see the underlying patterns in the Arxer's behavior, like a complex mathematical equation waiting to be solved. But as she tried to articulate this, she saw the hope in the eyes of those around her fade. They had been looking for a secret weapon, a key to defeating the Arxer. Instead, they got the fumbling explanations of a recruit who seemed as confused by her own abilities as they were. In the days that followed, as humanity licked its wounds and prepared for the next inevitable Arxer assault, Zara found herself increasingly isolated. Her fellow soldiers, once dismissive of her due to her physical weakness, now regarded her with a mixture of hope and suspicion. They couldn't understand how someone so physically unimposing could have insights into the enemy that had eluded their best military minds. Zara spent her time poring over every scrap of data they had on the Orcs, from battle footage to captured technology. She knew that somewhere in this mountain of information lay the key to understanding their seemingly invincible enemy. But the more she learned, the more questions she had. The Orcs' technology, in particular, fascinated and terrified her in equal measure. It operated on principles that seemed to defy the laws of physics as humanity understood them. Their weapons didn't just destroy, they seemed to rewrite reality itself. Their ships didn't just fly, they bent space around them. It was as if the Orcs had access to an entirely different rulebook for how the universe worked. As Zara delved deeper into her studies, she began to have dreams. Vivid, terrifying dreams filled with swirling patterns of energy and alien geometries. She would wake up with her mind racing, filled with ideas and concepts she could barely comprehend, let alone explain to others. It was during one of these late-night study sessions that Zara had her breakthrough. As she pored over the schematics of a captured piece of Orcs technology, something clicked in her mind. The swirling patterns she had seen in her dreams suddenly made sense. They weren't just random shapes, they were a language, a way of describing the universe that went beyond traditional mathematics or physics. With trembling hands, Zara began to sketch out her ideas. The more she wrote, the more the pieces fell into place. She was beginning to understand, on a fundamental level, how Orcs technology worked. And with that understanding came the first glimmer of hope she had felt since the war began. But as the implications of her discovery sank in, Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The Orcs weren't just technologically advanced, they were operating on a completely different level of understanding of the universe. Defeating them wouldn't just require better weapons or tactics, it would require humanity to evolve, to expand its understanding of reality itself. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows of her quarters, Zara sat back, her mind reeling from the implications of what she had discovered. She knew that what she held in her hands could change the course of the war, could perhaps save humanity from extinction. But she also knew that convincing others of the validity of her discoveries would be an uphill battle. In a military culture that valued physical strength and traditional tactical thinking, her ideas would seem the hidden strength. The command center of the human resistance's main base was a hive of activity. Holographic displays flickered with real-time battle data, and the air was thick with tension. Amidst this controlled chaos, Zara Chen stood before a panel of skeptical military leaders, her slight frame dwarfed by the imposing figures around her. "You expect us to believe that you've cracked the secret of Orcs technology." General Hawthorne, a grizzled veteran of countless battles, fixed Zara with a steely gaze. "Based on what? Dreams and doodles." Zara took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I know it sounds incredible, sir, but please, hear me out. What I've discovered isn't just a technological breakthrough. It's a fundamental shift in how we understand the universe itself." She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed her intricate diagrams and equations. "The Orcs aren't just more advanced than us. They're operating on a completely different paradigm of physics. Their technology doesn't just bend the rules as we know them. It rewrites them entirely." As Zara launched into her explanation, she could see the confusion and disbelief on the faces of those around her. She spoke of quantum entanglement on a macroscopic scale, of harnessing the energy of vacuum fluctuations, of manipulating the very fabric of space-time. To most of her audience, it sounded like the ravings of a madwoman. But as she continued, a few of the scientists present began to lean forward, their eyes widening in recognition. Dr. Ilara Voss, the head of xenotechnology research, interrupted Zora mid-sentence. "Wait, go back to that last equation," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. That's impossible. But if it's true, It would explain everything we've seen from the Arxer. Zara finished for her. Their seemingly impossible maneuvers in space, their weapons that ignore our shields, their ability to appear and disappear at will. They're not breaking the laws of physics. They're operating on a higher level of them. For the next several hours, Zara found herself embroiled in intense discussions with the base's top scientists. As they delved deeper into her theories, the initial skepticism gave way to cautious excitement. What Zara had stumbled upon wasn't just a potential weapon against the Arxer. It was a revolution in human understanding of the universe. But excitement in the scientific community didn't translate to immediate acceptance from military leadership. General Hawthorne and his peers remained skeptical. "This is all very fascinating," the general said, his tone making it clear he found it anything. But how does this help us fight the Arxer? We need solutions, not theories." Zara squared her shoulders, meeting the general's gaze. "Sir, understanding their technology is the first step to countering it. With this knowledge, we can begin to develop defenses against their weapons, maybe even find ways to disrupt their systems." "And how long will that take?" another officer interjected. "We're losing ground every day. We don't have time for R&D. "We don't have a choice," Zara replied, her voice firm despite her racing heart. "If we keep fighting the Arxer on their terms, with our current understanding, we'll lose. This is our only chance." The debate raged on, but in the end, the potential of Zara's discovery couldn't be ignored. A small team was assembled, consisting of the brightest minds in various scientific disciplines, with Zara at its center. They were given resources and a secure facility to work in, but also a strict deadline. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and time was a luxury they didn't have. As weeks turned into months, Zara threw herself into her work with a fervor that surprised even her. Her body might be weak, but her mind was a tireless engine, processing complex theories and running mental simulations at a pace that left her colleagues in awe. She barely slept, sustained by a mixture of stimulants and sheer determination. Slowly but surely, progress was made. Theoretical models gave way to practical applications. The first breakthrough came in the form of a detection system that could predict Arxer ship movements seconds before they occurred. It wasn't much, but in the heat of space combat, those seconds could mean the difference between life and death. As news of their progress spread, Zara found the attitude towards her shifting. The same soldiers who had once looked at her with disdain or pity now regarded her with a mixture of hope and reverence. She had become a symbol of humanity's resilience, a reminder that strength came in many forms. But with this new status came increased pressure. Every day brought reports of new Arxer attacks, of human colonies falling. The weight of expectation pressed down on Zara, threatening to crush her already fragile frame. It was during this time that Zara formed an unlikely friendship with Sergeant Marcus Graves, a battle-hardened soldier who had been assigned to the research team as a security officer. Initially dismissive of the eggheads he was tasked with protecting, Marcus found himself drawn to Zara's quiet determination. "I don't understand half of what you're saying," he admitted to her one late night as she pored over her calculations, "but I've seen that look before. It's the same look I see in soldiers right before they do something impossibly brave." Zara looked up, surprised. "I'm no soldier, Marcus. I'm just doing what I can." Marcus shook his head. "Courage isn't about physical strength, kid. It's about facing impossible odds and refusing to give up. By that measure, you're the bravest soldier I've ever met." His words stayed with Zara, giving her strength in the dark hours when doubt threatened to overwhelm her. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival anymore, or even for humanity as an abstract concept. She was fighting for every soldier like Marcus, for every colonist facing the Arxer onslaught, for every child who deserved a future among the stars. As their research progressed, Zara and her team began to uncover more than just the secrets of Arxer technology. Hidden in the complex equations and interdimensional models were hints of something greater, something that went beyond mere scientific advancement. "It's like a language," Zara explained to her team during one of their briefings. Not just a way of describing the universe, but of communicating with it. The Orcs aren't just using this knowledge, they're in dialogue with the fundamental forces of reality. This revelation opened up new avenues of research, but it also raised troubling questions. If this knowledge was a form of communication, who, or what, was on the other end? And what were the implications for humanity if they learned to speak it? As these philosophical debates raged, the practical work continued. Slowly but surely, human technology began to evolve. Shields that could withstand Orcs weapons for more than a few seconds. Sensors that could track their ships through their dimensional jumps. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The true test came sooner than anyone had anticipated. An Orcs fleet, larger than any seen before, was detected on a direct course for Earth. It was clear that this was to be their final push, an all-out assault aimed at ending the war in one decisive strike. In the frantic preparations that followed, Zara found herself thrust into a role she never could have imagined. Her insights into Orcs technology and tactics made her an invaluable asset in planning Earth's defense. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with military strategists to position their new technologies for maximum effect. As the hours ticked down to the inevitable confrontation, Zara felt a strange calm settle over her. She had done all she could. Now it was time to see if it would be enough. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and at its center stood the unlikeliest of heroes, a physically weak but mentally extraordinary young woman who had dared to understand the incomprehensible. As the first signs of the Orcs fleet appeared on long-range sensors, Zara Chen prepared herself for the greatest challenge of her life, and perhaps the most important moment in human history. The turning point. The command center of Earth's orbital defense platform was a maelstrom of activity. Holographic displays showed the approaching Orcs fleet, a vast armada that dwarfed anything humanity had faced before. At the heart of this controlled chaos stood Zara Chen, her slight frame belying the pivotal role she now played in humanity's defense. Orcs fleet will be within engagement range in T-10 minutes, a voice announced, cutting through the tension. General Hawthorne turned to Zara, his expression grim. "Well, Ms. Chen, it's time to see if your theories hold up. The fate of our species rests on your shoulders." Zara nodded, her throat dry. The weight of responsibility threatened to crush her, but she pushed the feeling aside. There was no time for doubt now. "Activate the quantum entanglement grid," she ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Across Earth's orbit, a network of satellites hummed to life. Based on Zara's groundbreaking research, these devices created a web of quantum-entangled particles, allowing for instantaneous communication and sensor data across vast distances. It was humanity's first step towards the level of technology the Orcs wielded. As the Orcs fleet approached, Zara's eyes darted between multiple displays, her mind processing the flood of information at an astonishing rate. She began to see patterns in the Orcs formations, predicting their movements seconds before they occurred. "Concentrate our forces here and here," she said, pointing to specific sectors. "They're going to try to split our defenses." The human fleet moved into position, guided by Zara's insights. As the first wave of Orcs ships engaged, her predictions proved eerily accurate. Human ships, forewarned of Orcs maneuvers, were able to anticipate and counter attacks that would have previously caught them off guard. For the first time in the war, humanity was holding its own against the technologically superior Orcs. But the alien forces were quick to adapt, changing tactics to counter the unexpected resistance. "They're reconfiguring their weapons," Zara announced, her eyes wide as she interpreted the sensor data. "They're trying to break through our quantum field." The battle raged on, a cosmic dance of destruction on an unimaginable scale. Zara's mind worked overtime, processing vast amounts of data and making split-second decisions that rippled across the battlefield. She was no longer just an analyst. She had become the linchpin of humanity's defense strategy. As the hours wore on, the tide of battle ebbed and flowed. Human forces, bolstered by Zara's insights and their new technology, managed to repel wave after wave of Arxer attacks, but the aliens' superior numbers and adaptability kept them in the fight. It was during a lull in the battle that Zara noticed something odd in the sensor readings. A particular subset of Arxer ships was behaving differently, their movements subtly out of sync with the rest of the fleet. "Focus our scans on Grid Sector 7 Alpha," she ordered, her voice tight with concentration. As the data poured in, Zora's eyes widened in realization. "It's their command ship," she breathed. "They're using some kind of advanced cloaking technology, but the quantum field is picking up traces of their communications." General Hawthorne leaned in, his skepticism forgotten in the heat of battle. "Can we target it?" Zara shook her head. "Not directly." But her mind raced, putting together pieces of a plan. "If we reconfigure our quantum grid to emit a specific frequency, we might be able to disrupt their cloaking field." The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as Zara worked with the technical team to implement her idea. It was a long shot, based on theoretical models that had never been tested in combat conditions. But at this point, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, they had nothing to lose. Initiating quantum pulse in 3, 2, 1. A wave of invisible energy pulsed out from Earth's defensive grid. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a mirage solidifying in the desert, a massive Arxer vessel shimmered into view in the heart of their fleet. "Target acquired," shouted the weapons officer. "All batteries, fire at will." The combined firepower of Earth's defenses converged on the exposed Arxer command ship. Caught off guard, its shields buckling under the unexpected assault, the massive vessel erupted in a spectacular explosion that rippled through the surrounding Arxer fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Without their central command, the Arxer forces fell into disarray. Their once coordinated attacks became chaotic and unfocused, allowing the human fleet to press their advantage. As the battle turned decisively in humanity's favor, cheers erupted throughout the command center. Officers who had once looked at Zara with skepticism now regarded her with awe and gratitude. But Zara wasn't celebrating. Her eyes remained fixed on the sensor readings, her mind racing. "Something's not right," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. As she watched, a subset of the Arxer fleet began to move in a pattern she hadn't seen before. It was as if they were regrouping, but with a purpose she couldn't quite grasp. "General," she called out, her voice cutting through the celebratory atmosphere. "I think we need to prepare for a counterattack. The Arxer are up to something." General Hawthorne, still riding the high of their apparent victory, looked at her skeptically. "Ms. Chen, we've destroyed their command ship. The battle is as good as won." But Zara stood her ground. "Sir, with all due respect, the Arxer have consistently shown the ability to adapt to our tactics. We can't assume they don't have contingencies." Her words proved prophetic. Just as she finished speaking, alarms blared throughout the command center. The remaining Arxer ships had suddenly accelerated, moving at speeds that defied human understanding of physics. "They're on a collision course with Earth," someone shouted. In that moment, Zara realized the terrible truth. The Arxer, facing defeat, had decided to turn their entire remaining fleet into a massive kinetic weapon. If even a fraction of those ships impacted the planet at their current velocity, the destruction would be catastrophic. Time seemed to slow as Zora's mind raced through possibilities. Their weapons couldn't stop all the ships in time. Their shields weren't designed to repel impacts at these speeds. They needed something new, something the Arxer wouldn't expect. And then, in a flash of inspiration, she had it. "The quantum entanglement field," she said, her voice rising with urgency. "If we reverse its polarity and amplify its output, we might be able to create a temporary spatial distortion." The scientists and technicians around her looked bewildered, but there was no time to explain the complex theories behind her idea. "Just do it," she commanded with an authority that belied her youth and stature. As the Arxer ships hurtled towards Earth, Zora's fingers flew over the control console, making minute adjustments to the quantum field. She was operating purely on intuition now, guided by her unprecedented understanding of the underlying principles of reality itself. With seconds to spare, she activated the modified field. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then, just as the leading edge of the Orcs fleet was about to enter Earth's atmosphere, space itself seemed to ripple. The Orcs ships, caught in this distortion of space-time, suddenly found themselves moving in directions they hadn't intended. Some veered off course, missing the planet entirely. Others collided with each other, their titanic energies dissipating in a series of spectacular explosions that lit up Earth's sky like a second sun. As quickly as it had begun, it was over. The remnants of the Orcs fleet, those ships that had survived the spatial distortion, fled at FTL speeds, disappearing into the depths of space. In the stunned silence that followed, all eyes turned to Zora. She stood there, her small frame trembling with exhaustion and residual adrenaline, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. General Hawthorne was the first to break the silence. "Ms. Chen," he said, his gruff voice uncharacteristically soft, "I believe you've just saved humanity." As the realization of their victory sank in, the command center erupted in cheers and celebrations. People Zora had never met were hugging her, thanking her through tears of joy and relief. But even as she was swept up in the euphoria of the moment, Zora's mind was already turning to the future. They had won a crucial battle, yes, but the war was far from over. The Orcs would be back, and next time, they would be prepared for humanity's new capabilities. As she looked out at the stars through the command center's viewport, Zora knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, one filled with wonders and terrors beyond imagination. And she, the unlikeliest of heroes, would be at the forefront of this new frontier. The battle was won, but the greatest challenges and adventures still lay ahead. Triumph of the human spirit. In the months following humanity's unprecedented victory against the Orcs, Earth underwent a transformation. The fear that had gripped the planet for so long began to give way to hope and determination. Zora Chen, once an overlooked recruit, had become a symbol of human potential and ingenuity. But for Zora herself, the aftermath of the battle brought a whirlwind of changes. She found herself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as the savior of humanity. Leaders from every nation sought her counsel, scientists clamored to work with her, and the public treated her like a living legend. It was a role she was ill-prepared for, and one that left her feeling more isolated than ever. "I never wanted to be a hero," she confided to Sergeant Marcus Graves during one of their now rare moments of quiet. "I just wanted to understand." Marcus, who had stuck by her side through it all, nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes, kid, we don't get to choose our battles, but we do get to choose how we fight them." His words resonated with Zora, reminding her of why she had pushed herself so hard in the first place. It wasn't about glory or recognition. It was about ensuring a future for humanity among the stars. With renewed purpose, Zora threw herself into her work. The victory against the Orcs had opened up new avenues of research and development. Humanity was on the cusp of a technological revolution, one that promised to redefine their place in the universe. But as humanity's understanding of the universe expanded, so too did the challenges they faced. The Orcs, though defeated, were not destroyed. Intelligence reports suggested they were regrouping, adapting to the new balance of power. And beyond them lay other alien civilizations, some potentially as advanced and dangerous as the Orcs. Zora knew that humanity's survival depended on more than just technological advancement. They needed to evolve as a species, to grow beyond the limitations and divisions that had defined their history. It was this realization that led to her most ambitious project yet, the Cosmic Harmony Initiative. The goal was to create a system of governance and cooperation that could unite humanity and prepare them for their place in the larger galactic community. "We can't approach the galaxy with the same mindset that led us to war on Earth," Zora explained to a panel of world leaders. "We need to think bigger, to see ourselves as part of a cosmic ecosystem." Her ideas were met with skepticism at first. Many argued that in the face of threats like the Orcs, humanity needed to focus on building its military strength. But Zora persisted, backed by a growing coalition of scientists, diplomats, and forward-thinking leaders. As the Cosmic Harmony Initiative took shape, its impact began to be felt across human society. Education systems were overhauled to include a broader understanding of the universe and humanity's place in it. Scientific research was directed towards sustainable technologies that could be applied both on Earth and in space colonies. Diplomatic efforts were launched to establish contact with other alien civilizations, seeking allies in the vast cosmic ocean. But perhaps the most profound change was in how humanity viewed itself. The realization that they were part of something greater than themselves, that their actions had consequences on a cosmic scale, led to a new era of cooperation and mutual understanding. It wasn't an easy journey. Old habits and prejudices died hard, and there were those who resisted the changes, clinging to outdated notions of nationalism and species superiority. But with each passing year, the vision of a united humanity grew stronger. 5 years after the battle that had changed everything, Zara stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's first true interstellar outpost. As she gazed out at the stars, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She was no longer the frail, uncertain young woman who had been thrust into war. Years of working at the forefront of human advancement had changed her, both mentally and physically. Regular treatments derived from their growing understanding of Orcs biotechnology had strengthened her once fragile body, but it was her mind that had undergone the most profound transformation. Zara's understanding of the universe now went far beyond what any human had achieved before. She saw patterns in the cosmic dance of galaxies, understood the whispers of quantum fluctuations, and could almost feel the pulse of space-time itself. It was a perspective that filled her with both awe and humility. As she stood there, lost in contemplation, a flurry of activity caught her attention. The station's long-range sensors had picked up something unusual, a signal unlike anything they had encountered before. Within minutes, Zara was in the control room, surrounded by a team of Earth's brightest scientists and military strategists. The signal was complex, layered with information that defied easy translation. But as Zara immersed herself in the data, she began to see familiar patterns. "It's an invitation," she announced, her voice filled with wonder. "And a warning." The signal, they soon discovered, came from an ancient alien civilization, one that had long watched the younger races of the galaxy from afar. They had observed humanity's battle with the Orcs and had been impressed by their resourcefulness and potential. Now, they were reaching out, offering humanity a chance to join a greater galactic community. But the invitation came with a caveat. The challenges humanity had faced so far were merely the beginning. The universe was filled with wonders beyond imagination, but also dangers that could annihilate entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. To survive and thrive, humanity would need to continue to grow, to push the boundaries of their understanding and capabilities. As the implications of this message sank in, Zara felt a familiar mix of excitement and trepidation. Once again, humanity stood on the brink of a new frontier, facing challenges that would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But this time, they were ready. United by their shared experiences, empowered by their newfound knowledge, and guided by the principles of the Cosmic Harmony Initiative, humanity was prepared to take its place among the stars. Zara turned to the assembled team, a smile playing on her lips. "Well," she said, her voice filled with determination and hope, "shall we introduce ourselves to the neighbors?" As a chorus of excited affirmations filled the room, Zara felt a sense of pride and purpose wash over her. From an unlikely hero thrust into war, she had become a beacon of hope, guiding humanity towards a brighter future. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with unknown dangers and incredible discoveries. But Zara knew that whatever the universe had in store for them, humanity would face it together, their indomitable spirit lighting the way through the cosmic night. The stars beckoned, and humanity, led by its most improbable champion, was ready to answer the call. The greatest adventure in human history was about to begin.